Most of my days followed a quiet, predictable rhythm. I was 53, single, with my kids grown and scattered across the country. My morning started with a cup of coffee on my back porch, watching the world wake up. I worked as a librarian, so I spent my afternoons surrounded by shelves of dusty novels and memoirs, each one filled with tales of lives far more thrilling than my own. Evenings were quiet, sometimes I'd curl up with a book or settle in with an old movie. And that was it, really. My life had settled into this routine like dust over the years. It was peaceful, but a part of me felt hollow. Then I met him. It was an unremarkable Tuesday afternoon, and I was at the grocery store, just another errand to cross off my list. I was reaching for a can of soup when I noticed him beside me. Tall, with messy brown hair and a warm, easy smile, he looked around 30, maybe younger. He glanced at me, flashed a grin, and held out a can of the same soup I'd been struggling to reach. "Looks like we have the same taste," he joked, handing it to me. I laughed, a real laugh, one I hadn't heard from myself in a while. "Thank you," I replied, feeling a strange warmth in his presence. We chatted briefly. His name was Jake, and he was in town helping his mom with some renovations. It was the sort of casual conversation that usually ends in polite goodbyes, but something about him lingered with me after he walked away. For the rest of the day, my mind kept wandering back to our brief encounter. The way he looked at me, the ease in his laughter, it made me feel seen in a way I hadn't felt in years. I brushed it off, reminding myself he was probably just being friendly. But that small moment sparked something in me, something that had been dormant for far too long. And though I had no idea how, I couldn't shake the feeling that our paths were meant to cross again. The next time I saw Jake, it was at the same grocery store a few days later. We ran into each other in the produce section, of all places, both of us reaching for apples. He greeted me with a grin, as if seeing an old friend. It surprised me how much joy I felt at the sight of him, a feeling that seemed almost out of place for someone I barely knew. "Hey, we meet again," he said, picking up a particularly shiny apple and offering it to me like it was a prize. I laughed, feeling that same warmth spread through me. "What are the odds?" I replied, accepting the apple with a small smile. That day, we ended up chatting a bit longer. He told me about his job, how he was an architect and worked remotely. He talked about the projects he was working on, and I listened with genuine interest. In turn, I found myself sharing little details of my life, stories about my kids, my work at the library, even my love for gardening. It felt easy with him, natural, like I didn't have to be anyone but myself. Our encounters became more frequent after that. Sometimes, we'd meet by chance, other times, it was deliberate. He started suggesting we grab a coffee together after grocery runs, and soon enough, it became a routine. Sitting across from him at a small cafe, we'd talk about everything from movies and books to life dreams. Jake was curious about the world in a way that felt fresh and vibrant. And more than once, he told me he loved hearing my thoughts. He found my perspective fascinating. In those moments, I felt something I hadn't felt in years, a spark of excitement, a flutter of anticipation. With him, I laughed more, felt lighter, and even found myself looking forward to the simple moments we shared. He made me feel alive in a way that I couldn't quite explain, and I began to realize that our growing connection was filling a space in me that I hadn't even known was empty. One Saturday afternoon, Jake and I decided to meet at the park. It was a beautiful day, the kind where the sun filters through the trees just right, casting a warm glow over everything. We strolled along the path, talking and laughing, sharing little moments that felt like secrets meant just for us. At one point, he playfully nudged me, teasing me about my favorite books, and I felt that familiar warmth as I nudged him back, laughing like a teenager. As we sat down on a bench by the lake, I glanced at him and noticed the way his eyes sparkled when he looked at me. He had a way of making me feel like I was the only person in the world, like my words and laughter mattered deeply to him. It was disarming and beautiful, and before I knew it, my hand had drifted close to his on the bench. We sat in comfortable silence for a moment, our hands only inches apart, and a quiet thrill washed over me. And then it hit me, this was no longer just friendship. I was developing feelings for him, feelings that were deeper than I wanted to admit. It was a shocking, almost frightening realization. I was 53, a mother, someone who had built a life around stability and predictability. I wasn't supposed to feel this kind of giddy excitement, this flutter of attraction, especially not for a man young enough to be my son. But sitting beside him, watching the sunlight dance in his eyes, I couldn't deny it. My heart raced at the thought of him, and I felt a rush of emotions that I hadn't experienced in years. There was fear, of course, fear of what others might think, fear of getting hurt. But there was also something stronger, something undeniable, a deep, genuine connection that had somehow bloomed between us. I realized, in that moment, that my life was changing. Jake had stirred something within me that I thought was long lost, something that reminded me I was still a woman with dreams, with desires, and with the capacity to love. It scared me, yes, but it also filled me with a kind of hope I hadn't felt in a very long time. After that day in the park, my feelings for Jake consumed my thoughts. Each time I looked in the mirror, I saw the same woman, but my heart felt younger, more alive. There was a thrilling intensity to my emotions, yet beneath it all, a shadow of fear loomed. What would people think? What would my children say if they knew? The age gap between us wasn't subtle. I could already hear the judgmental whispers and see the disapproving glances from people who couldn't possibly understand. The more I thought about it, the more conflicted I felt. Part of me wanted to run, to pull back before things went any further, to protect myself from the inevitable heartbreak. But then there was another part, a softer, braver part, that urged me to embrace this unexpected chance for happiness. I hadn't felt this way in decades, and it felt wrong to deny myself something so genuine and pure, even if it didn't fit into society's neat little boxes. One evening, as I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, my phone lit up with a text from Jake. "Today was fun. Can't wait to see you again." The simplicity of his words tugged at my heart, and I found myself smiling, forgetting, just for a moment, the worries that had been weighing me down. With Jake, I felt seen in a way I hadn't been in years. He valued my thoughts, laughed at my jokes, and made me feel beautiful, not despite my age, but because of who I was. The next time we met, I wanted to bring up the topic, to talk about the age difference and address the tension I was feeling. But as we laughed over coffee and shared stories of our days, I couldn't bring myself to do it. He looked at me with such genuine affection, and in those moments all my fears seemed to fade. I began to wonder if love, real love, was worth breaking the rules, worth defying expectations. Slowly, I started to let myself imagine a future with him. A part of me whispered that this was reckless, that it would all end in heartbreak, but another part, the part that yearned to feel alive again, wanted to believe that maybe, just maybe, this unexpected love could be real. It was an emotional tug-of-war, and I knew I had to make peace with my feelings, but for now, I decided to let myself live in the present and see where this journey would take me. As days turned into weeks, my connection with Jake continued to blossom, and I felt a compelling desire to take our relationship to a more intimate level. We had shared so much laughter, deep conversations, and even a few comfortable silences, but there was a longing in me to bridge that final gap. I wanted to invite him into my space, to show him my world beyond our casual meetings in public. But I also felt a flutter of anxiety at the thought. What if things got complicated? What if we crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed? And what would my children think if they found out I was inviting a much younger man into my home? Yet, the thought of not exploring what we had felt like a waste of this newfound happiness. I found myself at a crossroads. One evening, while preparing dinner, the idea struck me. I could invite him over under the guise of sharing a meal, something simple. I imagined cooking his favorite dish, perhaps the spaghetti he'd mentioned in passing, and setting the table with my grandmother's china. The thought of having him in my home, laughing over a meal, made my heart race. I could picture him lounging on my couch, the way he'd lean back, relaxed, making a joke that would leave me in stitches. As I stirred the pot, I thought about the many times I had entertained friends and family, filling my home with laughter and warmth. Why should this be any different? He was just as deserving of that space. I wanted to share my life with him, to show him the things that brought me joy outside of our public encounters. But still, doubts lingered. I knew I had to be honest with myself about my intentions. Inviting Jake over wasn't just a casual decision, it felt like stepping off a ledge into uncharted territory. My heart pounded as I imagined him sitting across from me, our chemistry sparking in the close confines of my living room. As I set the table that evening, I decided to text him, "Hey, how about dinner at my place this Friday? I'd love to cook for you." My heart raced as I hit send. A flood of emotions washed over me: excitement, fear, hope, and the undeniable thrill of possibility. This simple invitation felt like a leap of faith, but I knew I needed to embrace this moment. Whatever happened next, I was ready to dive into this new chapter, ready to see where it would lead. Friday arrived with a mix of anticipation and nerves swirling in my stomach. I spent the day preparing, channeling my excitement into the kitchen. I chopped fresh basil and garlic, the fragrant aromas filling my home as I boiled water for the pasta. I set the table, placing my grandmother's delicate china alongside a small vase of vibrant flowers. Everything felt perfect, almost surreal. When the doorbell rang, my heart raced. I opened the door to find Jake standing there, a bottle of wine in hand and that same warm smile that had drawn me in from the very beginning. He looked effortlessly charming, dressed in a casual button-up shirt that highlighted his youthful energy. "Wow, it smells amazing in here," he said, stepping inside and immediately enveloping me in a hug. It felt natural and electrifying at the same time. I could feel the warmth radiating from him, making the space feel even cozier. "Thanks. I hope you're hungry," I replied, leading him to the dining area where I had set everything up. As we sat down to eat, the conversation flowed easily, just like it always had. We shared stories, laughed at silly jokes, and I felt my heart swell with happiness as he genuinely appreciated the meal I had prepared. As the night wore on, the atmosphere shifted slightly. The lingering glances between us became charged with an undeniable tension. Jake's laughter echoed in my ears, but beneath it was a palpable silence that spoke volumes. I could feel it, the connection that had been building between us now crackled in the air. After we finished dinner, I suggested we move to the living room. I poured us each a glass of wine, and we settled onto the couch, our knees brushing against each other. The closeness was intoxicating. We shared stories of our childhoods, our dreams, and even our regrets. Each moment felt sacred, a tapestry of vulnerability woven through laughter and shared experiences. Then, as if drawn by an invisible force, we both fell silent. I turned to look at him, and there it was, an unspoken understanding, a shared desire hanging in the air between us. His eyes locked onto mine, and I felt a rush of warmth flooding my cheeks. In that moment, the world outside faded away, and it was just the two of us, suspended in time. "Can I kiss you?" Jake asked softly, his voice barely above a whisper. The question caught me off guard, but it also sent a thrill racing through me. I nodded, unable to form words, and he leaned in, our lips meeting in a tentative, sweet kiss. It was like a spark igniting a fire, the electricity of the moment surging through me. Everything else melted away as I lost myself in the kiss. The fear, the doubt, all of it dissipated as I kissed him back, allowing myself to fully embrace this connection. In that moment, I felt alive, cherished, and utterly free. In the days that followed that unforgettable evening, my mind swirled with a mixture of emotions, joy, excitement, and a nagging sense of apprehension. The kiss with Jake had changed everything between us. It solidified what I had already felt but hadn't yet articulated. I was falling for him, and the reality of our age difference weighed heavily on my mind. As I went about my daily routine, moments of happiness punctuated by memories of our time together filled my thoughts. I found myself smiling at random moments, recalling the warmth of his embrace and the way his laughter made me feel. Yet, alongside that happiness was a lingering worry. How would my friends and family react? Would they see this budding romance as a foolish escapade? Or worse, would they question my judgment? One afternoon, while arranging books at the library, I caught sight of a couple, older than me, holding hands and sharing a quiet laugh. They looked so happy, so in love, completely lost in their world. I felt a pang of longing. I wanted that same freedom, that joy that came from being unafraid to love, regardless of age. Who said that love had an expiration date or that it came with an age limit? As I pondered these thoughts, I remembered a quote I had read: "Age is merely the number of years the world has been enjoying you." It struck a chord. What if I chose to enjoy this time in my life? I had spent so many years conforming to expectations, playing the role of the responsible mother and dutiful citizen, but what about my own happiness? Did I not deserve that? I also reflected on the way Jake looked at me. The appreciation in his eyes made me feel beautiful and valued. He didn't see me as a woman defined by my age, he saw me as I was, with my quirks, my passions, and my spirit. That validation was intoxicating. The world might say I was foolish for dating someone younger, but Jake saw something in me that I had almost forgotten existed, a vibrant woman with dreams and desires. I took a deep breath, making a decision that felt right. I would embrace this relationship, come what may. I wanted to live authentically, without shame or fear of judgment. I knew it wouldn't always be easy, but I was ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. After all, love in any form, at any age, was worth fighting for. So, I chose to open my heart to Jake, to let him in completely, and to see where this beautiful journey might take us. As I stood in my kitchen one evening, preparing dinner for Jake once more, I felt a sense of contentment enveloping me. The sweet aroma of garlic and herbs filled the air, a reminder of the joy that had blossomed in my life since he entered it. I moved with a newfound energy, the rhythm of my daily routine infused with the excitement of our relationship. After dinner, we settled into our usual spot on the couch, the flickering candlelight casting a warm glow around us. Our conversations flowed effortlessly, punctuated by laughter and comfortable silences that felt like home. It was in these moments that I truly understood the essence of love. It was about connection, respect, and the shared joy of simply being together. In the stillness of that evening, I reflected on how far I had come. I had started this journey feeling lonely and unsure of myself, but now I was blossoming into a woman who embraced her desires. I realized that love, at any age, was a beautiful thing, capable of healing wounds I had long thought would never mend. It challenged societal norms and expectations, defying the limitations that others placed on us. "Can you believe we met in a grocery store?" Jake asked, a playful grin on his face. His eyes sparkled with that familiar warmth, and I couldn't help but smile back, my heart swelling with affection. "It feels like fate," I replied, leaning in closer. "Like we were meant to find each other at this moment in our lives." He nodded, his expression turning serious for a moment. "I'm glad we did. You brought so much joy into my life." In that moment, I knew I had made the right choice. I would no longer let fear dictate my happiness or hold me back from experiencing love. Instead, I would embrace it fully, without reservation. Love could come unexpectedly, breaking through the barriers of age and preconceived notions, transforming our lives in ways we never imagined. As we sat together, I felt a sense of peace settle over me. I was ready to embrace this new chapter of my life, to pursue happiness without hesitation. I wanted to encourage others, my friends, my family, anyone who would listen, that love knows no bounds. Whether it's a fiery romance or a quiet companionship, it's worth cherishing and fighting for, no matter the obstacles. So here I was, a woman in her 50s, finding herself again, through the eyes of a younger man. Love had shown me that I was still vibrant, still deserving of happiness, and that my heart was capable of new beginnings. I smiled at Jake, knowing that together, we could navigate this journey, hand in hand, heart to heart, defying the norms and embracing a love that was entirely our own.